Jack Fletcher was, by all accounts, the most unremarkable human in the Andromeda Milky Way coalition. Not the smartest, not the dumbest, not particularly attractive, but not ugly enough to turn heads. He was just there. The kind of guy aliens would point to and say, yep, that's definitely a human, probably. And in a galaxy where humans were now just one of 317 recognized sentient species, being forgettably average was practically a superpower. Jack worked at Grub-O-Matic, an interspecies diner that specialized in serving food that wouldn't kill at least 80% of its patrons. This was considered an excellent safety rating by galactic standards. His job consisted mainly of explaining to various life forms why they couldn't have what the tentacled thing at the next table was eating without experiencing rapid cellular dissolution. No, sir. I understand you think you can digest liquid methane, because your cousin once did it on a dare. But I'm going to have to insist on the human-safe menu, Jack said to a particularly insistent customer with 3 eyes and skin that changed colors with his mood, currently an irritated puce. 8 hours of this, plus a surprise visit from the health inspector, who was a sentient fungal colony, and therefore took particular issue with the mushroom soup, had left Jack exhausted. As his shift ended, he hung up his stained apron, which was emblazoned with the diner's slogan, "If it doesn't kill you, it's cuisine." The walk home from Grub-O-Matic to Jack's shoebox apartment took him through the less reputable parts of Nexus Station, a massive space habitat that housed millions of beings from across the galaxy. Most humans lived in designated Earth atmosphere sectors, but Jack couldn't afford those. Instead, he rented a universal environment unit with atmosphere settings he could barely afford to maintain. He was cutting through a particularly shadowy corridor, where the lighting had been temporarily out for the past 3 years when he heard a commotion ahead. 5 figures were huddled in a circle, illuminated by the glow of their various technological implements. They were clearly trying to be discreet, which on Nexus Station was typically a sign that something illegal was happening. "Great," Jack muttered. "A mugging. Just what I needed to cap off this stellar day." Any sensible person would have turned around. Any sensible person would have taken the long way home. Any sensible person would have, at minimum, tried to sneak past unnoticed. Jack Fletcher was apparently not sensible. "Hey," he shouted, marching toward the group with the misplaced confidence of someone who's had exactly 3 self-defense classes, all of which he'd attended while hungover. "Whatever you're doing, knock it off. People live around here." The 5 figures froze, their postures conveying universal shock. One of them dropped something that made a heavy metallic clank against the floor. "Oh," for Jack continued, completely misreading the situation. "Look, if you're going to mug people, at least do it quietly. My landlord's been looking for any excuse to raise rent in this sector because of increased security concerns, and I cannot afford another 5% bump just because you amateurs can't keep it down." The 5 figures looked at each other, their various anatomical features conveying confusion. One of them, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, raised what appeared to be a weapon. "Hey now," Jack said, holding up his hands. "I didn't mean to interrupt your crime. How about I just give you my credits now? I've got about 37 galactic standards, which is pathetic, I know, but it might save us all some time." He reached for his pocket, which the 5 figures apparently interpreted as a threatening move, because they all simultaneously leapt backward, taking defensive positions. "Wow, you guys are jumpy for muggers," Jack said, slowly pulling out his credit chip. "First day on the job or something?" The smallest of the figures let out what might have been a nervous laugh, quickly silenced by a glare from the tallest one. "Here," Jack said, tossing his credit chip toward them. "Take it. Just keep the noise down, all right? Some of us have early shifts tomorrow." With that, he started walking past them, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just interrupted not a mugging, but the final preparations of what was supposed to be the most precisely orchestrated assassination in the sector, his own. 48 hours earlier, in a secure conference room aboard a private vessel docked at the far end of Nexus Station, 5 of the galaxy's most lethal beings had gathered around a holographic display. "The target is a human called Jack Fletcher," said Vexnar, a Procyon assassin with metallic scales that shifted color depending on ambient temperature. As the default leader of the group, Vexnar prided himself on meticulous planning and flawless execution. His 12 successful eliminations were legendary in certain circles, mainly because no one even realized they were assassinations until months later. "A human?" asked Krill, a gaseous entity contained within a humanoid exosuit. Krill specialized in toxin deployment and could literally seep through cracks to reach targets. "I thought humans were soft and squishy. Why do we need 5 of us?" Because Vexnar explained with practiced patience, this particular human is believed to be dangerous. Our employer says he's a potential threat to galactic stability. "He doesn't look dangerous," observed Meepo, the team's tech expert. A diminutive being with 6 arms and large, owlish eyes, Meepo could hack any system in the quadrant. Her species, the Elni, were known for their technical prowess and their tendency to collect shiny objects. According to his file, he works at a diner and lives alone. No combat training, no special abilities noted. "Appearances can be deceiving," rumbled D-Rax, a massive reptilian creature with leathery skin who served as the muscle of the group. D-Rax wasn't particularly bright, but could break most things in half, which was a surprisingly useful skill in their line of work. "Maybe he has hidden weapons. Or maybe our employer just really hates bad service," quipped Zula, a lithe humanoid with bioluminescent skin patterns that she could control at will, making her the perfect infiltrator. "I've eaten at Grub-O-Matic. The food's enough to qualify as assassination all by itself." Vexnar silenced them with a gesture. "Our job isn't to question, it's to execute. The plan is simple. We intercept the target in transit between his workplace and dwelling, in the low surveillance area of Section D7. We'll have approximately 3 minutes to complete the operation before the station's automated security sweep." "Why not just blow up his apartment?" D-Rax asked. "Because," Vexnar said with a sigh, "the contract specifically requires confirmation of elimination, and our employer wants it to look like an accident or random violence. No traces back to them." "Classic," Zula said, rolling her eyes, which momentarily glowed brighter. "Rich clients always want the impossible. Make it look like an accident, but also bring back proof, but also don't leave evidence. Make up your minds, people." "The plan," Vexnar continued firmly, "is to intercept him here." A section of the holographic map glowed red. "Krill will deploy a paralytic agent, D-Rax will restrain him, Zula will administer the toxin that will simulate a heart attack, Meepo will ensure no surveillance captures us, and I will verify identity and death. 3 minutes, in and out." "What if he resists?" Meepo asked, fiddling with a small device. "He's a human working at a diner," Vexnar said dismissively. "How dangerous could he possibly be?" Now, standing frozen in that very alley, but the 5 assassins watched in collective bewilderment as their supposedly dangerous target casually tossed them his credit chip and walked past, complaining about his landlord. Is that him?" whispered Meepo, checking her bioscanner. "It says it's him, but—" "He thinks we're muggers," Krill's voice hissed from the exosuit speakers. "This wasn't in the plan," D-Rax rumbled anxiously. "Do we still grab him?" Vexnar, for the first time in his career, was momentarily speechless. The human wasn't running. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't even scared. He was annoyed at them for being too loud while trying to kill him. "New plan," Vexnar finally managed. "Follow him. We'll take him at the next junction." As they gathered their equipment, specialized weapons disguised as maintenance tools, Zula picked up the credit chip Jack had tossed. 37 credits, she confirmed, looking at it. Poor guy wasn't kidding. "Put that down," Vexnar snapped. "We're assassins, not thieves." "Right, because murder is so much more ethical than petty theft," Zula muttered, but she dropped the chip anyway. As they moved to follow Jack, none of them noticed Meepo slipping back and quickly placing the credit chip in a crevice where Jack might find it later, but an early sign that this mission was already starting to unravel. Jack hummed tunelessly as he continued his walk home, mentally calculating whether he had enough food paste to last until payday, or if he'd need to steal condiment packets from work again. Behind him, 5 of the galaxy's deadliest assassins attempted to stay inconspicuous while plotting his imminent demise. At the next junction, a dimly lit crossroads of corridors, Vexnar gave the signal. Krill released a barely visible cloud of paralytic gas from his exosuit's vents, directing it toward Jack with subtle manipulations of his containment field. The gas drifted toward the unsuspecting human, who chose that exact moment to bend down and tie his shoe. The paralytic cloud floated harmlessly over him and instead enveloped a passing maintenance drone, which immediately crashed to the floor with a loud clatter. "Oh, come on," Jack muttered, looking at the fallen drone. "These budget cuts are getting ridiculous. That's the 3rd drone this week." He walked over and examined the machine, completely unaware of the 5 assassins now frantically improvising behind him. "Abort gas attack," Vexnar whispered urgently. D-Rax physical restraint. Now. D-Rax lumbered forward just as Jack stood up, causing the human to turn around and finally notice the massive reptilian bearing down on him. "Ho there, big fella," Jack said, jumping back. "You're one of the muggers from before, aren't you? Look, I already gave you guys my credit chip. I'm broke honest." D-Rax, unused to targets who talked back, hesitated just long enough for Jack to trip over the paralyzed maintenance drone. As he fell, Jack instinctively grabbed for something to steady himself, which happened to be a loose pipe on the wall. The pipe broke off in his hand, releasing a jet of high-pressure coolant that hit D-Rax directly in the face. Roar. The reptilian roared, temporarily blinded and in pain from the freezing spray. "Sorry. Total accident," Jack shouted, still holding the pipe. "Are you okay? Here, let me help." As Jack moved toward D-Rax, the reptilian assassin swung blindly, missed completely, and crashed into a wall, knocking himself unconscious. "Oh no, your friend's hurt," Jack called to the others, who were watching in stunned disbelief. "Someone should probably get him to a med bay." Vexnar, trying to salvage the operation, motioned to Zula. "Plan B. Infiltrate and eliminate." Zula nodded, adjusted her bioluminescence to a soothing pattern, and approached Jack with a friendly demeanor. "Hello there," she said in a melodic voice. "Don't worry about my friend. He's prone to accidents." "Yeah, this station's a death trap," Jack agreed, still holding the broken pipe. "These maintenance pipes shouldn't be exposed like this. Somebody could get hurt." "Indeed," Zula said, moving closer with a concealed toxic injector in her palm. "Say, you look stressed. How about a relaxing shoulder massage? I've been told I have healing hands." "That's really nice of you, but I'm good," Jack said, then suddenly looked past her. "Wait, is your other friend okay? The little one?" Zula turned to see Meepo apparently fighting with her own equipment. The tech specialist was frantically trying to shut down a security drone she'd detected approaching their position, but her hacking device was malfunctioning, sending sparks flying. "Oh no," Jack exclaimed, rushing past Zula toward Meepo. "That looks electrical. Stand back." Before anyone could stop him, Jack used the metal pipe to knock the sparking device from Meepo's hands. The device flew through the air and landed directly in a puddle of coolant from the broken pipe right next to where Krill was standing in his exosuit. The resulting electrical surge traveled through the conductive coolant and into Krill's suit, short-circuiting its atmospheric controls. Alarms blared from the exosuit as Krill's gaseous form began to leak out through suddenly malfunctioning seals. "He's decompressing," Meepo cried out in genuine alarm. "His containment field is failing." Jack, operating on pure instinct and 3 half-remembered emergency training sessions from his first week at Grub-O-Matic, grabbed a patch kit from the wall, intended for minor hull breaches, and slapped it over the largest leak in Krill's suit. "Hold still," he shouted, applying more patches. "You're going to be okay, buddy. Just don't expand too fast." Remarkably, Jack's quick action actually helped stabilize Krill's suit long enough for the emergency systems to kick in. As the crisis subsided, Krill stared at Jack through his suit's faceplate with an expression that might have been confusion, gratitude, or indigestion. It was hard to tell with gaseous entities. You saved me. Krill's voice crackled through the damaged speaker. Well, yeah, Jack said, as if it were obvious. Those exosuits are no joke. My buddy Terry works with a guy whose cousin is gaseous. Says the containment failure survival rate is basically 0 without immediate intervention. He patted Krill's suit awkwardly. Looks like we're both having a rough night, huh? First you guys get interrupted during your mugging. Then this happens. The universe has it out for us little guys. Vex-Nar, watching from the shadows with Zula, was at a complete loss. In less than 5 minutes, their target had disabled 2 of his assassins and somehow convinced a third that they were now friends all without having the slightest idea what was actually happening. I think, Krill said slowly, looking at his would-be target with newfound respect, that I may have misjudged the situation. Jack, now accompanied by Krill and a somewhat reluctant Meepo, continued his journey home. D-Rax was still unconscious, propped against a wall with a hastily scrawled note Jack had written explaining he'd had an accident with station infrastructure, which technically wasn't a lie. So what brings you folks to this part of Nexus? Jack asked conversationally. Not many tourists come to Section D7. Unless you're really into authentic grime and questionable engineering decisions. We're job hunting, Meepo improvised, shooting a nervous glance at Krill. In this economy? Good luck, Jack said sympathetically. Took me 3 months to land the Grub-O-Matic position, and that was only because the previous server got partially digested by a Hroknar that misunderstood the concept of tipping. Behind them, maintaining a discreet distance, Vex-Nar and Zula followed in increasingly frustrated silence. This is unprecedented, Vex-Nar hissed. Krill and Meepo appear to be fraternizing with the target. Can you blame them? Zula whispered back. He saved Krill's life after we nearly killed him. That's got to create some complicated feelings in the whole trying to murder him department. Up ahead, Jack had reached into his pocket and pulled out a slightly squished food packet. Protein cube? They're technically expired, but the expiration dates on these things are super conservative. Probably only a 20% chance of mild hallucinations. Meepo, who hadn't eaten in 12 hours due to pre-mission protocols, hesitantly accepted the cube. Thank you, she said, genuinely surprised by the gesture. Don't mention it, Jack replied. U.S. service industry folks have to stick together. Speaking of which, if you're looking for work, don't bother with Grub-O-Matic. Management's terrible, and the tips are worse. Though I guess it depends on what you're qualified for. I specialize in technical systems, Meepo said automatically, then winced, realizing she probably shouldn't be sharing professional details with their target. No kidding? You should try central processing. They're always short-staffed, and the environmental controls are compatible with most species. Better hours, too. As they turned a corner, they came upon a group of Vrexian thugs harassing an elderly Floxian, who had clearly taken a wrong turn into this less than reputable sector. Oh great, Jack muttered. Actual muggers. Hold on a sec. Before Krill or Meepo could stop him, Jack marched toward the confrontation. Hey, pick on someone your own chronological age. The lead Vrexian, a bulky creature with 4 arms and a nasty disposition, turned to look at the approaching human. Mind your business, meatbag. I would, but my business is currently being forced to watch you be a complete waste of evolved sentience, Jack replied, displaying a complete lack of survival instinct that left his companions stunned. What happened next was equal parts absurd and impressive. Jack, armed with nothing but misplaced confidence and whatever combat skills one picks up breaking up fights at an interspecies diner, proceeded to create complete chaos. He grabbed a loose panel from the wall. Nexus Station's maintenance backlog was inadvertently becoming Jack's personal armory, and swung it like a shield, deflecting the first Vrexian's punch. The impact sent Jack spinning into the second thug, whose balance was compromised by an improperly healed third leg. Both went down in a tangle. The elderly Floxian used the distraction to scuttle away, multiple eye stalks swiveling in gratitude toward Jack. Look at that. You scared off that poor old timer. Jack accused from the floor, as if he'd planned this outcome. What kind of lowlifes prey on the elderly? Kill him, the lead Vrexian snarled. As the thugs closed in, something remarkable happened. Krill moved forward, his damaged exosuit releasing a targeted burst of paralytic gas that instantly dropped two of the Vrexians. Meepo, acting with surprising speed, used her hacking device to overload the neural implants that most Vrexians use to coordinate their multiple limbs, causing the others to essentially punch themselves. Within seconds, the Vrexians were retreating, dragging their paralyzed comrades and cursing in 17 different dialects. Jack picked himself up, brushing off his clothes. Wow, you guys were amazing. Where'd you learn to fight like that? Krill and Meepo exchanged looks. Professional training, Krill said vaguely. Cool. Jack replied, completely missing the implication. You guys are like secret badasses. Who would have thought? From their hiding spot, Vexnar watched in disbelief as Zula's bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors he recognized as admiration and conflict. Don't tell me you're impressed by this bumbling idiot, he hissed. He just charged 5 Vrexians to help a stranger, Zula pointed out, without any weapons, or plan, or reasonable expectation of survival. That's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. There's a fine line, Vexnar growled. And Zula continued, he's still treating Krill and Meepo like friends even though they were trying to kill him an hour ago. They still should be trying to kill him. Should they? Zula asked, her patterns shifting to contemplative hues. Our employer said he's dangerous. Does he seem dangerous to you? Or does he seem like someone who shares his last protein cube and fights bullies? Before Vexnar could answer, Zula had made her decision. She stepped out of hiding and approached the group. Hey, she called. That was quite a show. Jack turned, recognition dawning. Oh, hey. You're with the mugging crew, too. Glad you caught up. Your big scaly friend is back that way, still taking a nap. Right, Zula said, ignoring Vexnar's seething presence in the shadows. Mind if I tag along? Seems like you know your way around. Sure. The more the merrier, Jack said cheerfully. I was just telling your friends about this great noodle place that'll serve pretty much any metabolism type. Figured we could grab a bite since their job hunt's not going so well. With a final resigned look toward where Vexnar hid, Zula joined the group. 3 of the 5 assassins were now apparently socializing with their target, leaving their furious leader and an unconscious D-Rax behind. As they walked away, Jack could be heard saying, "So what do you guys usually do?" Because no offense, but you're the worst muggers I've ever met. Jack's apartment was exactly what you'd expect from someone whose life savings was 37 galactic credits, small, functional, and with the distinctive smell of a place where 6 different atmospheric requirements had been poorly accommodated over the years. It's not much, he admitted as he ushered his 3 new friends inside, but the rent's only crippling instead of catastrophic. The assassins looked around with varying degrees of discomfort. Krill's damaged exosuit made a concerning wheezing noise as he settled onto what generously could be called a couch. Meepo immediately became fascinated with Jack's ancient entertainment system, while Zula stood awkwardly near the door, her skin pattern cycling through colors that reflected her conflicted emotions. So, Jack said, distributing cups of a beverage that was allegedly coffee, but smelled suspiciously like recycled engine coolant. Not to be rude, but what's your guys' deal? Because the whole job hunting thing seems like garbage, no offense. The 3 assassins exchanged looks. Why would you think that? Meepo asked cautiously. Jack snorted. Because job hunters don't usually carry military-grade tech, paralytic compounds, or he pointed at a small device partially concealed in Zula's sleeve. Whatever that injector thing is. Plus, you've all got that I'm professionally dangerous vibe, especially glowy over there. The 3 stared at him in shock. Wait, Krill's mechanical voice sputtered. You knew we weren't muggers? Of course, Jack said, taking a sip of his definitely not coffee. Muggers on Nexus are usually opportunistic addicts or gang enforcers, not a coordinated strike team with specialized equipment. I figured you were bounty hunters or corporate security or something. Then why did you help me? Krill asked, genuinely confused. Jack shrugged. You were dying. Seemed like the decent thing to do. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the irregular hum of the apartment's struggling air recycler. We were sent to kill you, Zula finally said. Jack paused mid-sip. Ha! That's a plot twist. He put down his cup. Mind if I ask why? I mean, I know I accidentally served a Merlaxian ambassador, the wrong protein variant last week, but death seems excessive for a menu mix-up. We don't know exactly, Meepo admitted. Our employer said you were dangerous, a threat to galactic stability. Jack burst out laughing so hard he choked on his drink. Me? Dangerous? I can barely operate the particle grill at work without setting off the biohazard alarms. Apparently, Krill explained, there's intelligence suggesting humans have unique abilities that make them unpredictable and potentially destabilizing to established power structures. The only unique ability I have is disappointing my parents across interstellar distances, Jack said, wiping his eyes. Seriously, what could possibly make anyone think I'm worth sending 5? Wait, there were 5 of you, right? Where are the other 2? As if on cue, the door exploded inward in a shower of metal fragments. In the smoking doorway stood Vexnar, wielding an ion disruptor that was definitely illegal in civilian sectors, with D-Rax looming behind him, looking groggy but extremely angry. Traitors. Vexnar hissed, his scales flushing a dangerous crimson. I should have known humans could corrupt even professional assassins. Corrupt? Jack repeated incredulously. All I did was share some expired protein cubes. Silence. Vexnar leveled his weapon at Jack. I will complete this contract myself, with or without you 3. D-Rax, secure the defectors. D-Rax lumbered forward, but stopped when Krill, Meepo, and Zula moved to stand between him and Jack. This isn't right, Vexnar, Zula said, her skin pulsing with determined patterns. We've been lied to about this job. Our contract, Vexnar began. Our contract was based on false information, Meepo interrupted. Look at him. She gestured toward Jack, who awkwardly waved. Does he look like a threat to galactic stability? Appearances can be deceiving, Vexnar insisted, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Okay, can I just ask, Jack interjected, who exactly wants me dead? Because my list of enemies basically consists of my shift manager, and maybe that Trilaxian who accused me of shorting him on tentacle sauce last month. Vexnar's scales shifted slightly toward blue, a sign of hesitation. The contract came from an anonymous source through established channels. High payment, priority target. Jack's eyes widened. Wait a minute. Anonymous source? Priority target? This is about the soup, isn't it? 5 assassins stared at him in confusion. The soup, Jack repeated, as if it explained everything. When it clearly didn't, he continued. 3 weeks ago, we had this health inspector at Grub-O-Matic, a fungal colony entity. Super uptight, threatened to shut us down over cross-contamination risks. I was serving a rather unique individual, actually, now that I think about it. They never did tell me their species. Very secretive, lots of robes, paid in untraceable currency chips. Get to the point, Vexnar growled. The point is, this mysterious customer ordered our mushroom soup. The fungal inspector saw this and had what I can only describe as an existential crisis, apparently serving processed fungus to customers while a sentient fungal colony is present is some kind of taboo. Huge scene, lots of shouting. And my mysterious customer left in a hurry. Forgot their datapad. D-Rax rumbled. And I might have glanced at it before turning it in to Lost and Found. It had some pretty intense encryption, but the screen showed what looked like classified communication headers. Something about Galactic Council and sensitive negotiations. The assassins exchanged looks. You think a Galactic Council representative put a hit on you over soup? Vexnar asked incredulously. And a datapad, Jack corrected. which, by the way, disappeared from Lost and Found an hour later. Pretty suspicious, right? Despite himself, Vex-Nar was lowering his weapon slightly. This is absurd. More absurd than me being a threat to galactic stability? Jack countered. Look, politicians are the same across all species, petty, vindictive, and terrified of embarrassment. If this council member thought I saw something I shouldn't have, it would explain the anonymous contract and high priority, Meepo said thoughtfully. And the lack of specific information about why he's dangerous, Zula added. Vex-Nar's scales had now shifted completely to blue. If we've been manipulated into serving a personal vendetta. There's one way to find out, Krill suggested. Meepo can trace the payment back to its source. All eyes turned to the diminutive tech expert, who was already pulling out her devices. I'll need time, she said, but if there's a connection to trace, I'll find it. Jack looked around at the 5 assassins, 3 now apparently on his side, 2 wavering, and did what any sensible person would do in this situation. So, he said with forced cheer while we're waiting, anyone want another round of definitely not poisonous coffee? 2 days later, Jack found himself in a situation he never could have imagined, sitting in a secure room aboard a luxury starcraft, surrounded by 5 former assassins who were now his improbable protection detail. Let me get this straight, he said, nursing a beverage that, for the first time in years, actually tasted like real coffee. Not only was I targeted because I accidentally saw classified information on that datapad, but the whole humans are dangerous intelligence briefing was manufactured as cover. Precisely, Meepo confirmed, looking up from her array of hacked displays. Council member Thrix created an entire falsified intelligence report about human capabilities to justify the elimination order. According to the files I accessed, he claimed humans possess unpredictable cognitive patterns that render them resistant to standard prediction algorithms and dangerous adaptive capabilities. In other words, Zula translated, he was covering his political backside by making humans sound scary. The irony, Vex-Nar noted from his position by the viewport, his scales now a contemplative green-blue, is that by sending us after you, me, he created exactly the situation he was trying to avoid attention on his activities. Rax, who had eventually come around after much explanation and a surprisingly heartfelt apology from Jack for the coolant incident, rumbled in agreement. Small politician make big mistake. Jack shook his head in amazement. All this because he didn't want anyone to know he was secretly meeting with representatives from the Outer Rim systems while publicly opposing their admission to the Galactic Council. Politics, Krill's voice crackled through his newly repaired exosuit. More dangerous than assassination. The plan they'd formulated was simple but elegant. Rather than trying to challenge a powerful council member directly, a fight they would surely lose, they would instead ensure that the truth about humans was widely disseminated throughout galactic society, removing the cover Thrix had created for his actions. The data packet is ready for distribution, Meepo announced. Once released, Shan, every major news feed and information network in the Coalition will receive accurate information about human capabilities and subtle hints about Council Member Thrix's attempt to manipulate galactic opinion. Will it be enough? Jack asked. It won't destroy him politically, Vex-Nar acknowledged, but it will create enough scrutiny that he won't dare move against you again. At least not directly. Besides, Zula added with a luminescent grin, we've included a special encrypted message just for him, letting him know that any further attempts on your life will result in certain sensitive information about his private meetings becoming very public. Jack looked around at his unlikely protector's 5 deadly assassins, who, through a series of absurd circumstances and his own oblivious bravery, he had become possibly the strangest friends he'd ever had. I don't know how to thank you guys, he said sincerely. You already did, Krill replied. You saved my life when you had no reason to. You showed kindness when faced with threats. You shared your food when you had little to spare. Those are just basic decent person things, Jack protested. Perhaps for humans, Vex-Nar said thoughtfully. But in a galaxy where most species operate primarily from self-interest or collective preservation, your individual choice to help others, even potential enemies, with no expectation of return is uncommon. Maybe that's what Thrix actually feared, Meepo suggested. Not that humans are dangerous in traditional ways, but that your values might be contagious. Unpredictability, adaptability, individual moral choice over hierarchical command, these concepts can be destabilizing to rigid power structures. Jack said, considering this. So I accidentally became an ambassador for humanity by just being a decent guy? More or less, Zula confirmed, her patterns shifting to amused hues. And we're your very lethal diplomatic corps. D-Rax thumped his chest proudly. We protect human Jack now. And help correct misconceptions about humans, Meepo added, tapping a final sequence into her console. Data packet released. Now we wait. Jack leaned back in his chair, feeling a strange mix of relief and disbelief. The past week had been a whirlwind from routine maintenance worker to assassination target to accidental diplomat. And somehow he'd survived it all with nothing but basic decency and a talent for stumbling into the right place at the wrong time. What happens now? He asked, looking around at his newfound protectors. I can't exactly go back to fixing environmental systems after all this. Vexnar's scales rippled thoughtfully. Actually, I believe you can and should. What? Jack blinked in surprise. Think about it, Zula interjected, her bioluminescent patterns forming what Jack had come to recognize as her contemplative configuration. The most powerful statement you could make is to return to your ordinary life, continue being exactly who you are. It proves that humans aren't the threat Thrix painted you to be. Besides, Krill added, maintenance workers access every level of every facility. No better position for gathering information should you need to. Jack almost choked on his coffee. Are you suggesting I become a spy? Not a spy, Meepo corrected, closing her displays with a wave of her hand. An observer. An unofficial representative. Eyes and ears in places diplomats never see. The forgotten spaces, D-Rax agreed, nodding his massive head. Where workers speak truth. Where real galaxy lives. Jack considered this. He'd never wanted to be important or influential, he'd just wanted to do his job. Maybe save enough to visit Earth someday. And generally not cause problems. But now, despite his best efforts, he'd been thrust into something larger than himself. I'm really not qualified for this, he protested weakly. That's precisely why you're perfect, Vexnar countered. You have no agenda, no political ambitions. You just help people. Fix things, share food. Important things, D-Rax emphasized, thumping his chest again. The Starcraft's communication system chimed, interrupting their conversation. Meepo quickly checked the incoming transmission. It's working already, she announced, sounding impressed. 3 major news networks have picked up our information packet. The Galactic Council has announced an emergency session to discuss recent mischaracterizations of human capabilities. And Thrix? Jack asked, issuing carefully worded denials and claiming the intelligence reports were provided to him by subordinates. Meepo's expression was the equivalent of a smirk. He's already looking for someone to blame. Classic political maneuver, Krill observed dryly. Zula drifted closer to Jack, her colors shifting to something warm and reassuring. The immediate danger has passed. You'll still need to be careful, but with the spotlight on human galactic relations, Thrix can't risk another attempt without exposing himself completely. Jack nodded, still processing everything. So I just go back to work? Pretend none of this happened? Not pretend, Vexnar corrected. Remember, observe. Report to us if you notice anything concerning. Otherwise, yes, continue being human Jack, the maintenance worker who treats everyone with unexpected kindness. And who survived 5 assassins, Krill added, a hint of pride in his synthesized voice. Through pure, glorious luck, Jack laughed. Not just luck, Meepo countered. You showed adaptability and quick thinking that impressed even us professional killers. Don't underestimate yourself, Jack. D-Rax lumbered over and placed a massive hand on Jack's shoulder with surprising gentleness. Human Jack brave. Human Jack good friend. Looking around at these 5 former assassins, now his protectors, allies, and bizarrely, friends, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving Earth: belonging. "All right," he said with a decisive nod. "Humanity's accidental ambassador it is. But I have one condition." "Name it," Vexnar replied. Jack grinned. "We meet for dinner once a month. My treat, though. Maybe one of you can help me expense it somehow? Ambassador budget or something?" 5 different species of laughter filled the room, ranging from Zula's tinkling chimes to D-Rax's rumbling earthquake, and Jack knew that while nothing about this situation was normal, somehow it was exactly where he was supposed to be. As the starcraft prepared to dock at Central Station, where Jack would resume his old life with new purpose, Meepo approached him with a small device. "Emergency communicator," she explained, pressing it into his palm. "Untraceable, unhackable, and disguised as a standard maintenance scanner. If you ever need us, any of us will come." "No matter what," Vexnar added solemnly. Jack tucked the device into his pocket. "Thank you. All of you." "No, human Jack," D-Rax said with surprising eloquence. "Thank you for showing Galaxy different way." As he stepped off the starcraft minutes later, back into the bustling, multi-species chaos of Central Station, Jack straightened his maintenance uniform and adjusted his tool belt. To anyone watching, he was just another human worker going about his day. But in his pocket sat a direct line to 5 of the galaxy's deadliest assassins, and in his mind danced the realization that sometimes the most revolutionary act wasn't fighting the system, it was simply being kind within it. Jack smiled to himself as he headed toward his first repair call of the day. Humanity's unlikely ambassador was reporting for duty,